Bulletproof Radio, a state of high performance.
Hey everyone, today's cool fact of the day is that if you like music, it doesn't just give you something to talk about at parties. It's probably, or at least maybe, because you have a variant in a gene called AVPR1A. And if you have that variant, you also maybe have an improvement in your social communication and your ability to attach to other people. Kind of cool. So if you're a music lover, great. If you're not a music lover, well, that's all right. Maybe it's genetic. Today's guest is Peter Sage. He's been on Bulletproof Radio once before, a world-class entrepreneur, guy who's well known as a motivational speaker, working on all kinds of very, very big projects to change things, and someone I really admire and respect, and one of my favorite guests on Bulletproof Radio. And we are sitting here today, if you're watching on YouTube instead of just listening in your car, we're sitting here today at Brian Rose's London Real Studios. He was kind enough to allow us to use his studio to record this episode of Bulletproof Radio. Peter, welcome.
Dave, absolute pleasure. It's been a while since we got the opportunity to sit face to face, and I'm glad it happened.
It worked out really, really well, and got a chance to hang out with you for the last couple of days at Dan Pena's celebration. And by the way, Dan Pena was also a guest on Bulletproof Radio. So it was really cool to do that and realize we had a chance to interview like this. You've moved to London from Dubai, which is where you were last time. Mm-hmm. What do you think about moving to London? What was motivating that change for you?
Many different factors. To be fair, I'm a huge fan of Dubai, and I'm a huge fan of sunshine.
Okay.
And so coming back to England, people say, "What are you doing?" And a couple of things. My fiance, her family is based over here, and she was kind of missing them. And I'm a great believer that if your values are clear, your decisions are easy. And if you value family more than sunshine, it was an easy decision. And sometimes you can get comfortable. There's nothing wrong with the house you live in sometimes, but you just know it's time to move house. And so coming back here to sort of keep our feet back on the ground and retouch base with the roots, you should never forget your roots. And allow Thea to go and spend a bit more time with her family and see that. And then we'll look for the next part of the adventure as to where that will go. We're not quite sure yet. We'll tune in when we get there. But I think it'll be somewhere with a little less cloud.
A little less cloud, well said. I wanted to ask you about that because you are a biohacker. Last time we talked about all the cool things that you do to take control of your biology. You take care of your health, you take care of your body, you take care of your mind and your spirit, and you're very conscious about those things. Mm-hmm. So you moved from a place where you have no problem with seasonal depression and no problem with vitamin D levels, and now you're in a relatively cloudy, dense part of the world. Did you change your routine at all when you made that change? Did you get sun lamps? Did you do something like that?
Not as such. I mean, I have a crystal bed, which I use on a regular basis to sort of balance the energy out. But other than that, vitamin D you can buy in a bottle.
Yep.
That's the only thing. And I'm a great believer as well, Dave, that you really shouldn't rely too much on environmental or external issues to allow yourself to feel centered or grounded or in check. Because if that environmental issue, which is always subject to the law of impermanence, like everything in the physical world, gets moved or your circumstances change, then if you're leaning on that kind of stuff as a crutch and the wall moves, then you're going to fall down. So people say, it's great to have a meditation room at home. Well, yes, it is, and it's a great training ground. And if you can have it as a preference, then fine. But if you can't get into a state of centeredness when you're in the middle of a metro, or if you're walking down the street or brushing your teeth or in the middle of a boardroom meeting, and you don't have the ability to come and center yourself, what are you really doing it for? Being able to have that sort of bar at that level and know that that's what I'm aiming towards, not to surround myself with a cushy environment to make it easier so that fill in the blank. The real reason here is so that I can apply this in my everyday world. And if I can do that, I don't need a meditation room. I don't need a fancy gadget to put on my head to get me into theta. Mm-hmm. It's nice, it's available, I can use it, but I don't need that. So, that's really why, coming back here, I don't really change my routine. If you can't get in touch with the bigger reasons, which all come from the inner world, looking around in the outer world isn't going to solve much.
All right. It's a good argument. So what you're saying is you don't want to rely on these things, yet you have a meditation room. It has a heart math sensor that clips to your ear, mm-hmm. and you do those things. why do you do those things versus maybe meditating in a less beneficial environment just to become stronger at meditating? Like, when do you know whether you want to challenge yourself, or when do you know that you want to make it easy so that you can do these practices?
I think it's not so much about challenge.
Okay.
Yeah, when I sit in meditation, a lot of people from experience tend to go to meditation to try and achieve a certain state or try to get somewhere. And then the mind, by very definition of doing that, will run you around in circles.
Because you're trying, right?
Because you're trying to get somewhere. You sit down to get into meditation. What if instead you actually sat down as if you've already arrived? A lot of people don't do that. They sit down and say, okay, now I'm going into meditation. Now I've got to get into a certain state, or, come down into alpha or hopefully theta. Or now I've got to hit certain coherence levels. And so the game has begun. You're chasing that rabbit, as I say, to try and get somewhere. Whereas if you sit down as if you've already arrived, and then the biofeedback sensor is almost it is a lagging indicator. It shows you what you've done, not where you're going to, not what you're doing.
Right.
So it's a good way to keep check. Sometimes, it's nice to be able to keep score. But, you don't play the game always to keep score. You play the game for the love of the game.
Yep.
The score tells you if you're improving or not, and that's fine. But if you beat yourself up because you're not getting the score you want, you're kind of defeating the object in a certain way. So if you can't sit down and do that without the stuff, then doing it with the stuff isn't really going to lead to a place where you can have practical benefit. So again, it's not about challenging myself. I can use that. I can use training wheels on a bike, but the joy of riding the bike anywhere is the joy of riding the bike.
Yeah. The training wheels analogy is useful. I benefited greatly from using the heart math sensor for a while.
Me too.
And first I learned, okay, this is what it feels like when I go into fight or flight mode. Like, there's a body feeling of that.
You can tell.
And then you realize, wow, that's happening a lot. And now I can see it. And it was invisible. It was always happening, but I was unaware. And then the next one was, okay, now how do I stop that? How do I play whack-a-mole with it? And this is something that you do with your coaching clients. It's something that I recommend to anyone on listening today, is that, like, if you really want to improve, get that. And those are training wheels. But after a couple months, my sensor gets dusty because I don't need the sensor anymore, just like you're saying. But I think I learned some skills that might have taken me 3 or 4 years sitting in a yoga studio every day, trying to get in touch with that, and having a really good teacher say, see what you did right there? That's what you're trying to avoid. It's really rough.
Absolutely. And it gets people into a groove.
Yeah.
I skydive a lot. So, when you first start skydiving, the most important part of your kit, apart from your chute, apart from your rig, is your altimeter. You need to know where you are. Am I 18 seconds from bouncing, or am I okay before I wave off? But you see people that skydive a lot, and they never really look at the altimeter. There's an inbuilt sense of knowing that I've been falling for about 60 seconds, I'm about 4,000 feet, it's time to wave off. And a little positive confirmation. So you're training yourself into that, and that's kind of how I see the heart-mouth sensor. Yeah. It's nice to have, and it's nice to train you into knowing when you're going into coherence, but I don't need to look at that now to know if I'm in it or not. I can feel it.
Yeah. Medical doctors have the same sort of thing. Like that, they know your temperature, they know your heart rate. They can get the gauges and they can look, but when they touch you, they've done it 10,000 times. They just know, and it's that just knowing that for me was really valuable, because I don't know that I really came into the world with a great sense of those things. Probably the opposite of that. And so it's been kind of cool, and I'm hoping people listening here, we're both guys of accomplishment. And we've both used that tool, and we both use meditation and things like that. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the entrepreneurial side of what you do, because last time we didn't get into that very much when we interviewed. And so, we both do this thing around having inner awareness. And there's all kinds of podcasts where people talk about entrepreneurship, and you have to do this for marketing, and you should have this many clicks and whatever else. Not interested in that right now. Okay. What I'm interested in is the inner state that makes you a good entrepreneur. You started, 15 companies before you were 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somewhere around there.
So you're someone who might know a few things about this.
Yeah.
Now, what is the inner state that you create to be a really good entrepreneur, and what are the specific things you do to get there?
I'm going to come at this from the angle of not kind of going back and say, what did I specifically do? Because for me, it was a natural process.
Okay.
What I can do is highlight, I think, some of the inner states that I had, or some of the inner dialogue that I had that allowed that to happen. But one of the most common misconceptions I see, Dave, with entrepreneurs is people that are now going into entrepreneurship because it's one of the most or more viable options than traditional opportunity right now. Yeah. People are starting to understand that in the 21st century, as the barrier to entry to business has lowered, when you now, rather than investing in $1 million worth of back office infrastructure, can subscribe to an app for $10 a month that'll do it for you. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's never been a time in human history where getting into business has been easier, less risk-free, less capital intensive. So a lot of people are now drifting into that because it's a more viable option than going to work for somebody for 40 years and realize that that isn't the pathway to happiness, fulfillment, contentment, or any kind of financial security or freedom. So I see a lot of people going into entrepreneurship right now. And to get into entrepreneurship, a lot of people, unfortunately, I find make a mistake of choosing what it is that they're going to for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. So let's back up. People have asked me many times, what is the number one key to being a successful entrepreneur? Is it the market, the timing, the people you surround yourself with, the Ivy League school network that you have, the daddy's credit cards or access to capital, all this kind of stuff, right time, right place. And it's none of that. You can see people that have one or all of those boxes ticked and never get the bat off their shoulder and take the swing that's required to hit the ball out of the park. Or they hit the ball and it falls short. You see people that have none of those attributes going for them that create magic that the rest of us are in awe of. So what is the difference that really makes the difference? Yeah. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, from my experience, it is the ability to handle uncertainty at a higher level in a way that allows you to be comfortable with it. A lot of people, for the word entrepreneurship itself, is outside of their comfort zone. To use a Tarzan analogy, I'm swinging on a vine called salary here, and I'll never let go of that until I have something of equal or greater value here to grab hold of before I let go of this. And it's that time frame that is governed by your ability to handle uncertainty. When do I let go of the vine I'm currently letting go of? True entrepreneurs probably wouldn't be holding on to the vine in the first place. It's like, let's free fall, baby. And I'll catch something, and I have certainty about that. Now, there has to be a level of intelligence around that, otherwise you're going to damage yourself on the canopy floor. So for me, I've always had the mindset of saying, well, look, I started with nothing. I came with nothing. And looking at the job perspective, why would I ever want to trade my time for money? Because by the definition of working for somebody else, let's just say you're earning, let's call it $1,000 a week, which, for some people be a good wage. Mm-hmm. If I'm earning $1,000 a week in salary, then by the very definition, that job that I'm doing and participating, contributing to the company has to be worth more than $1,000 a week. Otherwise, there's no benefit to the CEO of that company. So by the very definition of working on a salary, I'm settling for less than what I'm worth. Because if I'm worth $1,000, he's not going to pay me $1,000. Otherwise, there's no upside to the business. So by being able to recognize that and saying, I'm here to add value. I don't define my self-worth with my net worth, which is a huge part of what a lot of entrepreneurs, unfortunately, don't get. It's like, I have to start a business to prove to the world I'm good enough. Yeah, get over that.
Bad idea. Yeah.
And therefore, if they're using that analogy, they'll usually aim for the business, the industry, or the opportunity that they perceive will give them the most certainty. So again, it's that kind of letting go here, but wait till I grab something. Mm-hmm. So I'll use an example. Let's say we have a hair salon. Okay. And we have an owner of a hair salon who is the entrepreneur. And she's off opening her third salon somewhere. She's a true entrepreneur. The manageress of that salon, let's call her Sarah, has worked there, all of the last few years. She runs the salon. She handles all of the stock take, the order taking, the processing, the wages, the cashing up at the end of the night, the opening, the closing, managing the team. She, in her mind, essentially is running that business. And she's like, wait, I'm the one that does all the work here. I should be doing this for myself. Any dummy can run a business. I'm clearly working for one because they're never here. So I'm going to do it. And she listens to that voice that I think most of us have and certainly listened to at some point. Whether we tell it to shut up or not is down to that ability to handle uncertainty. But that voice that says, something? We're born to captain our own ship. And so she says, I'm going to do it. I'm letting go of the vine. I am going to start my own company. Now, to you and I sitting here as betting men or not, what would you say that she's most likely to start a business in?
Probably hair salon.
Probably a hair salon. Now, here's the killer question. Is she going to start a hair salon because she's passionate about cutting hair, or it's because that's what she feels she has the most certainty of success in? Majority of the time, yeah, it's the latter.
Oh, yeah.
So she now starts the business decision on the wrong foot. To her, it makes total sense. I'm going to start the business. I have the skills. I have this. But what she's doing it out of a need for certainty, not out of a pathway of passion.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ask any business owners, I'm sure you're a successful business owner yourself, Dave, would answer this just as well. If I was to ask you, how long is the average business, new business, proceeding before it engages something that wasn't planned for on the business plan?
If it's a good company, about 6 minutes.
6 minutes. Okay, yeah. There you go. If average company, maybe 30 seconds. But yeah, somewhere around there. In other words, uncertainty is going to show up.
Yeah.
Now, that's not endemic to business. It's endemic to life.
Exactly.
There is no certainty. Get over it. We seduce ourselves into a 21st century manufactured reality where we want to blame somebody else if something doesn't follow our path of certainty. Yeah, not going to happen. There is no certainty that exists in nature. So if we are now starting a business in the hair salon based upon we think it'll give us more certainty, and as a result, uncertainty then shows up, as we know predictably it will,
mm-hmm.
Our unconscious sense of self at that point starts saying, oh, uncertainty, I need to deal with this, but I don't have the resources. What most people do is they go and do what they're most certain of, what they can do. So what good old Sarah does, she starts cutting more hair. She starts working more in the business to try and solve the problems. Well, that doesn't work. Now, fast forward, she's doing...
Why doesn't it work? I mean, doesn't she start a successful hair salon?
No, because she's trying to solve problems by following certainty.
Okay, got it.
So she's now cutting more hair. She's working 60 hours a week in the business.
Got it.
It's no more fun for her. She'd earn the same hourly rate as she would at McDonald's, and now this whole business thing wasn't what it was cracked up to be because she's not taking time to step back and access the resources she would need to deal with the problems which would come from passion. So if she says, we go back to the point of starting a business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can probably know more about running a salon, but I've always wanted to work with people. Yeah, or kids, or horses, or paint, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start a business in terms of working with children. Now, when uncertainty then shows up, as it will within 6 minutes, because she's passionate about that, she's reaching to a deeper place of self to get over those obstacles. And so if you can come back and say, why am I starting this business? Because if I'm chasing certainty, I'm going to encounter uncertainty as a given. But do I have access to the resources of passion, determination, persistence, to be able to dig deep, to go through those uncomfortable times, that trial by fire that business will present you, to really get over that because no one's talking me out of this. This is a dream and I'm in. I don't care what the outer world says right now, I'm in. Whereas if it's starting a salon that doesn't go according to plan, a lot of the mistakes people make, and this is classic Michael Gerber, is that they're not really entrepreneurs. They're technicians who woke up one day with an entrepreneurial seizure and says, I am going to start a business because I understand how to do the technical work of that business, which is a death knell, rather than understand that in order to be an entrepreneur, running a business that does that technical work is a different animal. The entrepreneur, I started, say, 15 businesses before I was 30. Some of them even worked. Some of them wiped me out completely. Some, did very well. Some I sold. Some, should have stayed ideas when I was drunk.
Right.
And everything in between. Now, I was passionate about building something, because there was a vision, there was an idea. It was a crazy idea. It was a great idea. It doesn't matter. Swing the bat and run on with it. But I had that impetus for wanting to create something because I believed in the vision. I wasn't chasing certainty. In fact, most people told me most of the ideas wouldn't work. And I'm like, well, thank you for encouraging me with the instruction of avoiding mediocrity. And now I know I'm on the right path. I used to say in my early 20s, when I get as many hate websites as Bill Gates, I know I'll be doing well. I don't need the good opinion of others
to
follow my own path. What I need is a sense that I'm walking a path of truth. I'm walking a path of excitement. I'm walking a path that I could fall off at any one time, and I have done. I've smashed my face up skiing, and I said to people, if I don't fall off the edge once in a while, I'm not walking close enough to it. That's the game I want to choose. I don't want to hang out and live life in a narrow bandwidth.
Yeah, no, it's a little easier for you. I mean, you're an exotic sports car fan. You've had some early success. And there's even a study recently of entrepreneurs that say one of the biggest statistical likelihoods that mean you'll be a successful entrepreneur is whether your family had a little bit of money, enough to provide a cushion for you. So if we're talking about Sarah, who works at a hair salon, isn't really making that much money, doesn't have a lot of savings, has a couple of kids at home, and then says, I want to follow my passion, but I also want to take care of my family. I also want to eat. I mean, this is what I hear from people listening to the show when they post, okay, maybe I'm interested in being an entrepreneur. Maybe I have a passion, but I also have obligations. And how do you counsel people like that who don't necessarily have the ability to fail spectacularly?
That's about rules and values. Mm-hmm. You can value family, but if your rule for valuing family is I must provide them a house, then you're going to be judging yourself based upon that benchmark. And if I don't do it, then not only am I not good enough, but my family think I'm a loser. If your value is family, and my rule for that is I'm going to show them how to break out of the limitation of certainty by swinging the bat, hit or miss, then you're going to have a different engagement with that business opportunity. Yeah. So it's not about the values. It's about your rules around how you experience those values. And a lot of people, like health, a lot of people say, I value health, so therefore, I must, to feel healthy, train at the gym 5 times a week, have 10% body fat, eat organic food. And then, if they only train 4 times that week, they don't feel healthy.
Right.
Whereas you have people that have a high level of consciousness around understanding rules, same value, health, but in order for me to feel healthy, I take a deep breath and drink filtered water. How easy is that for me to experience what I want to experience on a regular basis? And if I go to the gym 3 times or twice, I'm still feeling healthy. It's not designing excuses or lowering benchmarks. It's allowing you to have access to what's most important to you in life as a feeling. And a lot of people have good sets of values, but screw themselves over the rules on how they experience those values. So for a business, and you say, well, I want to eat, I want to have this. First and foremost, check your ability to handle uncertainty. Yep. Are you seducing yourself into thinking it's real? You ask anybody watching or listening to this right now, hold up your hand. How many people have had something in their life that they thought they were totally certain about? A relationship, a job, a position, anything.
Yeah.
To have it pulled in a heartbeat, to wake up next day and it not be there. There's not a person listening that can't raise their hand. Mm-hmm. So you tell me where certainty exists. So getting real with that allows you to start engaging with opportunity on the terms of being able to say, right, okay, if I know that can happen, I deal with that up front. Now the game becomes about what can I build for the sake of building through passion.
Right.
Win or lose. And if I fall down, I get back up. Why? Because that's life.
Well, you sort of talk about certainty as a binary thing here. Like it's either certain or it's uncertain, but there is a statistical curve
There's
here.
a grade.
Right. And so if you are a first-time entrepreneur starting out, say you're young, maybe you have some student debt, and you're like, okay, I want to live in San Francisco where it's $3,000 for 3 square feet of living space. And you're looking at this going, all right, like I'm passionate, I'm undercapitalized, I have a burning desire to be an entrepreneur. And let's say, in this case, Sarah's young, so she doesn't have a lot of business experience. She hasn't learned all of the ropes that she could learn. Do you still advise jump in and be an entrepreneur? Is there a role for mentorship? Is there a role for doing the learning or building up some capital as a part of pursuing your passion? Like I see some people jumping in before they're ready.
Individual question.
Yeah.
And you're right. If you had sort of certainty or uncertainty as a seesaw,
yeah.
then and on one side you've got absolute total certainty, right? You know what's going to happen, what you're going to eat for breakfast, what you're going to do that day. Yeah, it's boring. You will go and screw something up in your life just to get uncertainty, or variety is another word for that, by the way.
Yeah.
So if you have total uncertainty in your life, you've just lost your career, your job, your dog's walked away, your wife's left you, whatever, you're going to start craving some certainty. So there's a balance point. My question is, where do you live in regards to that center line, because most entrepreneurs I found, successful entrepreneurs, hang out more towards the uncertainty side than the certainty side. Now, you need both. You need a balance. But if you're a first-time entrepreneur and you don't have a lot, you can use that as an excuse. Say, well, I've got nothing to lose. I may as well swing the bat. I was born on a council estate, without rich parents. I dropped out of school at 16. I've had no business lessons. I use that as an excuse to say, well, I can't go any lower.
It's true that the best time to start out is when you're completely happy living in a sleeping bag under a bridge, because, like you said,
absolutely. But is there a role for mentorship? Absolutely. I mean, that's business hacking at its finest.
Yeah.
Go find somebody that has that's walked that path and is willing to share it with you without any hidden agenda, other than they have a vested interest in allowing you to be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that mentorship, 100%. If you have a degree of certainty that you're a little hesitant, one of the principles of the universe, tentative is no power. Nowhere in nature is tentative rewarded. Do or not do, as Yoda would say.
Yep.
So if you're feeling tentative and you feel like you have to have a little bit of financial savings, then I would advise people not to jump in with both feet and risk it, because for some, that's a fast track to Prozac.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, now I have failed. So it's an individual response. You can ask yourself, what is my ability to handle uncertainty, and what can I do to try and increase that? And it's not just business, Dave. It could be in relationships. Yeah. You speak to some people, they'd much rather start a business with nothing than approach a good-looking girl in a bar. What do you do? And it boils down to a lot of the same thing, the ability to handle rejection.
This is very true.
I coach guys on being able to go and talk to women in bars that have
really
issues with rejection.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, go and find massive rejection. I've taken guys to nightclubs and says, right, here's the game. You find, these are guys that are so nervous. And again, it's not about the girl. It's not about them. They're beautiful souls. Everybody is. But if you are filtering your engagement through, what if they say no? And what does that mean? In other words, my rules for rejection, we're back to rules, not values.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can crawl under a rock and never come out. So I say, listen, here's the game. You are not allowed to go home until you get 10 no's in a row. And here's how we're going to play it. You're going to go, you're going to look at a good-looking girl, you're going to eye somebody up that you'd like to engage with, you're going to walk up and you can say, hey, my name's John, I've noticed you from across the room, I've been plucking up the courage to come and ask you a question, but I've got to tell you something honestly, I have a real issue with rejection. So I'm going to ask the question anyway, knowing you're probably going to say no, but here goes. Would you mind if I join you for a drink?
Wow, that's an interesting line.
Now, notice what's happened. What are most guys doing when they're trying to overcome rejection? They're trying to buffer themselves up with, I'm an astronaut. I just qualified from Top Gun. Here's my, fake Rolex. Here's, it's overcompensation to try. Now, women are smarter than us, by 1,000,000%. They can smell the bullshit. They're tired of the bullshit. Oh, yeah. They can see through it, right? If you have a guy that comes up with the one quality that they're sorely lacking in most bars, in whether it's San Francisco or Moscow, doesn't matter, authenticity.
Yeah.
And say, hey, listen, here's my issue. Here's all the crap that I'm trying not to show people I'm dealing with. I'm going to put it on the table up front. Here's who I am. Do you mind if I join you for a drink? Yeah. Now, not buy you a drink because you're going to get another agenda from women say thanks anyway, loser, goodbye. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But no, join you for a drink. Now, if she says no, which is the worst thing that can happen, what just happened? Great. We got one. 9 more to go. Yeah, if she hits you with a handbag, you can probably even sue her. What's the worst that can happen? You're not going to drop dead of a cardiomyopathic heart attack.
Mm-hmm. So,
and I did, the last guy I did that with, bless him, he was like in his 50s, still lived with his mum.
Wow.
Right, accountants, surprise, surprise. Yeah, nothing against accountants, but they're better talking at spreadsheets than people sometimes.
Yeah.
And so we've gone in, and he was so nervous the first time he went up, he forgot his own name. My name's, he's so busy ahead of himself. Anyway, of course, it was like a total rejection. He comes back and says, she said no. I'm like, great, we got one. Keep going. I don't care if you've got to ask the bouncer. We're not going home till you get 10.
Wow.
So you got about 3, 4 no's. And of course, then you start to insulate yourself about rejection. It's like, is that all that's going to happen? It's like being in business. You fail 2 or 3 times, Dave, and it's like, well, if I fail, I fail. Yeah, I'm not going to starve to death. Not in modern society. Try it. They'll force feed you.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to happen. So what happens? You have to downsize and live in a smaller box for a short while. Guess what? More stories for the grandkids, right? You're not going to die.
Yeah.
So anyway, the fifth time he goes up to a girl, it's actually two great-looking girls are together. And of course, now he's looking around, he's got the game, he's got his line, and he walks up, and they go and screw everything up and say yes.
Oh, he didn't get his 10. Terrible.
Right? We reset. Anyway, but he comes over to me and says, they say yes, now what do I do?
And he got 2.
Right? Anyway, later on in the evening, I'm watching this guy, and it's total translate. It was beautiful to see because he suddenly realized that rejection is nothing but a conceptual mind game where you've set the rules up in your favor or not. Now, if you had a rule that says, in order to feel rejected, right, and some people are like, oh, somebody says no to my idea. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's the chances of that happening apart from 110%? Somebody disagrees with my point of view, I feel rejected. Right? What if you had a different rule that says, listen, if 10 people all at once within a 20-yard radius turn around and call me a loser and say that I'm not, then, fair enough, I'll choose to feel rejection. Yeah. But until that happens, screw it. That's not my rule for rejection. And so I see this guy, and halfway through the night, he's holding court with like a couple of stunning-looking women. He's natural, he's in flow. I've had to go up and drag him out. I've walked up and said, hey, girls, I'm very sorry. He's like, oh, he's my friend Pete. I'm like, girls, I'm sorry about this. We're looking for some rejection right now. We're not finding it here. And I grab him and walk him away. He's like, what were you doing? That was going great. I says, that's not why we're here. Hey, one time done. After one night, that was it. Never had an issue again. Yeah. Now, you can fast track an MBA and stuff like that. Face the issue and realize it was a ghost.
One of our guests on Bulletproof Radio did I think a whole year, or at least a month of rejection therapy, where every day he had to get someone to say no and ask for the most ridiculous things, trying to get no's and kept getting yeses. He went to Krispy Kreme and said, could you make an Olympic symbol donut for me? Which is not on the Krispy Kreme menu. And they said, absolutely. And they made it for him, and it's several million views on YouTube later. And it's really funny, but that idea is something I've only recommended to 2 clients. I don't go out to bars with clients, but I've said, look, you're so afraid, you need to just go hear no a lot.
Seek massive rejection.
Yeah.
You realize it was a game. In fact, one of the things you talk about business and sales, salesman, it's the ability to handle rejection. I teach in my Millionaire Business School how to hire top salespeople and how to reject them in the interview to see how they cope with that. But one of the best, absolutely. Otherwise, how are they going to cope in the real world when they're representing your company and your bottom line's at stake? But one of the best people that you could ever hire are Jehovah's Witnesses. Why? Because they're so used to hearing no. Rejection doesn't faze them. You get a Jehovah's or a previous Jehovah's Witness who, in a sales job, they're amazing because they're so used to having the door slammed in their face, and it's just next. Yeah. Because they understand one of the critical principal components, which is separating concept rejection from personal rejection.
Yeah.
Just because somebody doesn't like your idea doesn't mean to say they don't like you. It's like the self-worth and the net worth. The second you can unhook from that, you step into freedom that most people never experience. That somebody says no to your idea or your finance proposal or what have you, and you walk and crawl under a rock. Yeah, if somebody says no 30 times in a row, you may want to check your proposal. Right? Yeah. But they're not saying no to you. So if you walk in 2 inches shorter into your next interview or your next pitch, then it's a downward spiral. Yeah. Rather than understanding that the golden rule that I say to people when you're pitching ideas is that people buy people before they buy their products, ideas, and concepts. I will take somebody who has absolute rock-solid, massive certainty with half the skill set, because I can teach skill set, versus somebody who has all of the skill set and half the certainty every day of the week.
Okay.
Right? And it comes back to that same thing.
Now, there's a flip side to this. You've talked about how to accept rejection, but you can also be the rejector, the person who is rejecting something. And you can do it, you're a loser. I would never let you buy me a drink, which is, it's just unkind, right? So what is the nicest way that you know of to reject someone?
I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. And before I think of the answer on that, let me just come back to what you're saying.
Okay.
Because there's many different ways you can get rejected. Yeah. There's the classic Donald Trump, you're fired. Or there's, I'm sorry not to let me think about it and, come back. And all I will say is this. It ties back into a fundamental truth that if more people understood, there would be a lot more tolerance in the world. All anybody can ever do is project their own model of the world. Now, there's a difference as well here between a state of consciousness and a stage of consciousness. You can be at a high stage of consciousness and be in a lousy state because of certain factors. But where's your go-to? Where's your default? So if you are arrogant, if you look at people from a top-down mentality, I saw a lot of that in Dubai. There's a lot of certain kinds of people in Dubai that have certain helpers in the home, shall we say, or maids, and they talk down to them. It's a superior inferiority frame. It's they treat people like they're on their shoe. So that's not anything other than just a reflection of where those people are at their level of consciousness. If you're coming from being arrogant, you're going to reject somebody in a way that makes them know that they're less than you. If you are going to reject somebody, if your fear of rejection, or if you're so empathetic because you don't own yourself at that level, you're going to be so squirmy kind to reject someone that they're not even going to know they were rejected. They still think they're in the deal. And you see that a lot in terms of what I call the martyr pattern. A lot of people sacrifice themselves. They don't say no.
Right.
And this is where I work with CEOs in a way that doesn't look at the surface. You want to get good at working with people, Dave. Get good at spotting patterns of behavior because there's only so many of them. Tony Robbins taught me that, right? And so you get people come to a business coach because they want time management and because they're so busy. Well, an average business coach will teach them better time management skills. I wouldn't do that. I'd start peeling back the onion. All of a sudden you find out that potentially they have an issue with either micromanagement because they're afraid that if their company fails, they fail.
Right.
And therefore, they're having to keep their fingers on every single pie because they're a control freak. Or they daren't say no. They've got an issue with rejection, so they don't say no. So they're accepting too much on their plates. They don't have, they don't want to impose on other people's schedules. And therefore, they've got too much on, so they think they need time management. There's always a layer of the onion to peel back to find out what's really going on. So if I was to reject somebody, for me, I would do it in a way that hopefully make sure that they didn't feel less than. Their sense of self wasn't compromised based upon why I'm rejecting. If it was an idea, then I'd let them know why I'm rejecting their idea, or it's not a team fit. And if I think it has potential, I'll probably help them out with some ideas and send them on a different path. Or if it was someone that came on a sort of date and I was single kind of thing, I'd try and shore up their ability to feel bad about themselves if I said no. I do it with humor a lot of times. That's also a great icebreaker.
The reason I asked is, I've been studying how to say no. I worked in venture capital for a while, and I raised, as an advisor to startups, lots of times. I've been in hundreds and hundreds of VC pitch meetings. And different venture capitalists say no. And as an entrepreneur, this is a way to kind of feel crushed. Like you went in, you thought you gave the right presentation, you're laying it all out, their most important presentation, and then they're just like, meh. And then they say bye. And so different firms and different partners have very different styles. And my investors, Trinity Ventures, I worked there, and they had the nicest no, but the firmest no of any of the VCs I'd worked with. And so one of the worst things you can do to an entrepreneur is string them along if you're going to no. So these guys were the most professional no people that I'd come across with. And it was always like, we'd like to help, we want to see more, whatever it was, but it was always very clear that it was a no. And if it was a maybe, it was a very clear maybe.
Excellent.
But the best rejection that I got was actually from you. So when I was raising angel investments for Bulletproof as a precursor to the venture round that we just raised, I reached out to a few friends, people I respected, people who were doing good work. And I said, look, there's an opportunity to invest in Bulletproof. And I'm basically only taking money from people that kind of are on the same team. And I sent it to you, not expecting you to invest or not invest, but opening the invitation. And most people are like, either no answer if they didn't want to do it, or they're like, no thanks, not right now. And instead, you recorded like the most upbeat, positive video. It was probably all of 30 seconds. You did it on your iPhone, and I watched that and I was like, I feel great. Like I felt better after having been rejected, probably than if you'd said, here's $25,000 or whatever it would have been. So I wanted to say thanks, but you demonstrated a skill there that is something I've been watching for a long time, and you nailed it. So thanks for that.
I'd forgotten all about that.
Yeah, I imagine you would have, but yeah. And it was a small thing, and I didn't take it as a good or a bad thing whether or not you chose to make a small investment. I just felt like it would be good to make the opportunity available to you if it was a good fit.
And that was the right call.
Yeah, but it was remarkable how you did it. I wonder if I still have that somewhere. If I do and I can find it, do you mind if I play it for people?
No, absolutely.
All right, cool. So if you're listening and we insert it, that means I found it. Otherwise, it's probably somewhere on my computer. But I probably saved it because it was that good.
Oh, wow.
So I just wanted to say thanks for that, first of all.
I can see why the leading question now.
Yeah. I thought of that after the question, but it just occurred to me that you really did. You really did do that really well. Huh. Let's shift gears a bit. We tend to jump around whenever we talk.
That's cool.
Let's talk about bad habits and people who do things that they don't like. You know, they say that they're not going to drink for a month, and then halfway through they have a drink. You know, they're not going to smoke, and then I just smoked, or whatever the other bad habits are. The ones where you make a choice at some point to do something. I'm not going to eat the cookie. You eat the cookie. What's as a human behavior expert, what's your take on that? Like, what should people do?
I'm going to start with a Dan Pennerism on there. And Dan taught me many, many years ago. He says, people do things for two reasons, either inspiration or desperation. And again, it's like coming back to the foundational point where Sarah chose which business path to go down. Yeah, it's at that point that the future can be predicted, depending on which path you go. If you're moving away from a bad habit out of desperation because you're upset with yourself, you know, I'd say, I don't want to wake up feeling crap like this again. I will never drink tequila. And of course, 2 weeks later, your friends are out, it's partying, and somebody shouts shots, and you're like, wow, I'll go on then.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, what is that? If you're moving away from something, then usually the biggest pain is closer to the consequence of that. The further away you are from the consequence of that, 2 weeks later, and, you know, I can justify it by having been to the gym 3 times, so screw it, I deserve a shot. Then it's far less likely to have some level of sustainability. If you're doing things for inspiration, you're moving towards something. It comes down to the most powerful question you can ever ask yourself when it comes down to motivation behavior. Why? Why am I doing this? You look at a marathon, New York Marathon, 30,000 people. I've never ran New York. I've ran London several times and other marathons around the world. But yeah, the ethos is the same. You see that for many people, it's a huge health goal. Let's say you have 100 people wake up one morning and they feel either desperate because they're overweight and they're going to set themselves a goal to run a marathon, or they feel inspired, they want to go and do it for another reason. And they're going to say, right, I'm going to go run a marathon. It's a lifetime check box for a lot of people that would like to have that as a benchmark for the ultimate expression of doing something healthy. And so if you look at who made it, 12 months later, you look at the start line and you see the people going. You take a survey. I'm not talking about the people that are already in the good habits that it's running their 4th, 5th, 6th marathon because it's something that's part of their identity as an athlete. I'm talking about the first timers. You will see more people running a marathon for something other than themselves than you will those that are doing it for themselves. In other words, if your why is big enough, then you'll usually stick with the journey along that habit. And the why is big enough when it's outside of who you are. Yeah, if you're running for a bigger cause. I share a lesson with you. When I ran the Marathon des Sables a few years ago, which is a crazy race I would advise absolutely nobody to do.
Where's that? I don't know that.
It's a marathon a day, so 42 kilometers every day, back to back for 7 days. Apart from day 4, which is 84 kilometers, which is a double marathon across the Sahara Desert, carrying about 20 kilos, 40 pounds on your back. Water's rationed to 9 liters a day. That's for washing, cooking, hydrating, and 50 Celsius or 135 degrees. And sub-zero at night.
You did this on purpose?
Yes. Yeah, I wasn't threatened, and there was no gun to my head. And I'll be honest, I did it out of ego. It was billed as the toughest foot race in the world, and at the time in my life, I felt taller if I stood on my ego. So therefore, let me go and prove to myself I can do this. I've conquered everything else. I've ran the marathons. I ran a marathon in a 20-kilo rubber rhinoceros suit, just because I could. And the craziest part was actually landing from a 23-hour flight from Sydney to London and getting a taxi to the start line.
Wow.
Yeah, don't do that either.
Yeah, that's not kind to your body.
No, so I'm running the Marathon des Sables. And I'm not doing it for money to raise for charity. I've got a bit of stuff that's happening around that to make me feel good. But, I'm doing this for me. I'll be honest. This is me against me raising the bar. I was in my early 30s, and this is where I'm heading. And so I decided that push. On the day of the double marathon, I woke up with food poisoning.
Ooh.
I tried to save water the night before by not hydrating my food enough. And it was a bad move. I was throwing up. I was retching out of both ends. I had no strength. My friend had to help me lift my rucksack to put it on. There's 600 of us at the start line for that day. The gun goes off on an 84-kilometer, 52-mile stage.
Wow.
And we've already run 100 miles at this point. I've got blisters on blisters with Sandy, and I've got, it's tough. The body's beat. And I've got to muster up the courage to run 84 kilometers that day, running through the night as well, where it's sub-zero temperature. And I set off because, my ego was pushing. By 8 o'clock that night, I couldn't run for the first 4 hours. I was just too in bad shape. But then I have to run because you get taken out of the race if you're behind the cutoff points. So I've got spasms in my shoulders. I'm on anti-inflammatories, and it was a nightmare. So 8 o'clock that night, the sun's going down. I've ran best part of 30 miles. I've got another 20 miles to run. Temperature's dropping, so I've got to keep running to stay warm. I'm running on a compass bearing in open desert, right? You're not tracks. This is dunes, wadis, and I'm done. I'm absolutely done. There's not 1 ounce of motivation left. There's no positive self-talk. This is it. Forget it. At that point, something really unique happened. A moment I'll never forget. I heard this sort of trudging noise through the sand, and I kind of looked up. I'm on my own. I look around, and there's 2 people coming towards me, both competitors with numbers on their chest. And one of them had his head down, and one of them had his head up. And then I noticed they were tied at the wrist to each other. And the guy with his head down was a blind Korean guy in his late 60s.
Wow.
And the person he was tied to was his guide. And I watched them in silence just go past me, trudging in the sand in the distance. I'm like, wow. And I started asking myself a question. I'm a student of human behavior. I'm like, what makes somebody, what possesses somebody who's clearly not an athlete, the guy's a pensioner, run the toughest foot race in the world, where he can't even see where to place his feet, and we're running in unkind terrain where one wrong slip you can break your ankle, let alone the extremity and the extremeness of what it is that we're doing. And I'm like, I've got to find out what motivates that guy, because I'm young, I'm fit, and he's ahead of me right now. Right? Well, how? Why? And I ran after him to find out, and I learned through the guy he was tied to was also his translator, that he not only ran this race, he ran it every single year to raise money for the hospice that had looked after his brother when his brother was dying of cancer. And I'm like, well, it was like a slap in the face with a ping pong bat. I'm like, if ever I needed a reminder, a lesson, that it's not about me. When I focused on me, I got as far as crying on a rock, thinking I was about to quit. Telling my ego that, it was a fucking son of a bitch for talking me into this damn thing in the first place. And when I saw that expression of humanity at its greatest mark, to be able to contribute beyond himself in the pain and the suffering because there was something bigger driving him than his own why. I learned a huge lesson about breaking bad habits, about motivation, about everything I needed to learn. If your why is big enough, in other words, it's outside of you, why are you really doing this? Is it to make more money? Or is it to give your kids a better education that you didn't have? Is it so that you can drive a fast car so you can prove to the world that you're better than the person the teacher said wouldn't start their own business or wasn't good enough? Or is it so you can inspire other people? Look at the statistics of Olympic athletes that have broken the world records, that have stood for the test of time. They did a study. Those that broke the ceiling, the glass ceiling, we have thunder coming through to make the point as if God agrees himself. I'm kidding, but if you look at those studies, the people that broke the glass ceilings were the ones that did it for something that was beyond them. They wanted to demonstrate to their community what was possible. They wanted to show their parents that they were a better son or something that was beyond. They wanted to be the example, not the ego-based driven like levels of insecurity that, oh, look at me, I'm significance driven. I got the gold medal, therefore I'm better than you. No, I was able to light a pathway that you can follow as well. And so, if you're struggling breaking your habits, check your why. Because if it's ego-based, it'll get you as far as it got me, which was on a rock, a couple of 100 kilometers, into a desert, wondering what the hell I was doing, sitting down, giving in.
Did you give in?
No, he inspired me. He inspired me to finish the race that day. That stage, I ran another 26 miles the day after and then finished the race the day after.
Wow.
And I owe it all to a blind Korean guy I'll probably never meet again. And a huge lesson. It's not about me. You see mothers that lift cars off children, right? Because the body overrides every active limitation at that point. You see people get out of bed. Navy SEALs doing it for a bigger reason. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Napoleon summed it up beautifully. He says, you can shout and scream at men all you like, but they will die for medals and ribbons. Yeah, something that is beyond them, something that they can go towards that's bigger than them, that represents something to them that leaves a bigger legacy. So, you can try and biohack everything and try a habit for 21 days and, shock yourself and all the rest of it. Right? But ultimately, if your reason for doing it is bigger, all of that may assist, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
Fully agree. What a powerful story. And I love it that you actually finished the race, because it takes a lot of fortitude.
Thank you.
Now, let's bring that back to being an entrepreneur. You have Millionaire Business School. Mm-hmm. And this is where people who really want to learn how to be entrepreneurs come in and learn from someone who's done it more than a few times. So what's motivating the people who come to Millionaire Business School?
Love the fact you asked that, because it's a little bit of a sucker punch. And I'll say this openly to anybody listening. I call it the Millionaire Business School for a specific reason. I teach you how to make $1 million in 12 months. That's a no-brainer. Anybody with a decent idea these days, or a decent idea in today's society where you're interconnected instantaneously with 7 billion people, can make $1 million doing the right things. That's just systems, process, and application and execution. That's the easy part. But it pulls people in that think that being an entrepreneur is about making money. Mm-hmm. I teach something which I'm calling enlightened entrepreneurship. That's kind of the market I'm looking to I won't say own, but certainly establish myself in right now, because that's really been the full circle for me. I became an entrepreneur because I was desperate to prove to the world I was good enough, because I had so many insecurities as a young man that felt that I wasn't, as a lot of people do.
Sure.
My teacher said I couldn't do business studies. Screw you, I'll show you.
Exactly.
And my parents put so much time and effort into me. They sacrificed their hours so that I could go to private school for the first few years until they couldn't afford it anymore. I want to give something back. So, that was the way I could do it. But enlightened entrepreneurship is about something different. And I'm very excited and proud that I've created a 3-day event that really takes people on a journey. They show up thinking, how do I make money? That's the default. But the day one, we don't talk money. We don't talk business. Well, we do talk money. We talk about reinventing your relationship with money, because it's mainly dysfunctional for most people, which is why they don't have enough of it. So we go through, day one is all about psychology. It's reinventing who you are, reinventing your relationship with business, with life, with yourself, with your why. Now, understanding what drives you at your core, peeling back those layers of the onion so that when you look in the mirror, you have a far deeper understanding of what it was the reasons you took that decision to start a business or become an entrepreneur in the first place. Once we handle that, then building business is easy. So day 2 and 3, we teach you business at the highest level. But day 1's my favorite day. Day 1 is kind of a whole, as I say, reinvention. So, I've created a 3-day event that is a transformative event, because people don't need more information.
It's free.
Yeah, you can get you learn how to build a business on Google. Siri will tell you over coffee. I mean, that's the world we live in. But understanding who you are when you look in the mirror and take off the mask, that's a whole different ballgame. Siri hasn't got that far yet. So, people don't want or deserve information. They need transformation. Otherwise, nothing changes. I say to people, if you go to a typical business event, seminars, course, read a business book, you will find different ways of earning the same amount of money, because the money that you earn right now is consummate to a lot deeper patterns than you're currently aware of. It is a projection of your current level of where you're at in terms of value you add. And most people are chasing money like trying to chase strength in a gym without lifting weights. We all know on the physical side, we go to the gym, we lift the weights, we get the strength.
Right.
You sit in front of the fire, you get the wood, you get the heat. But a lot of people are chasing money, which is a byproduct or a consequence of adding value by going into the gym and say, listen, give me the strength and I'll lift the weights. Well, that doesn't work. So how do you shift the process? Because money, Dave, is nothing more than a conceptual projection that human beings have invented. The only place in the universe money means anything is in the mind of a human. Nothing else keeps track of it. It's simply a way that we've customarily put together that's better than trading chickens and goats to keep track of ways of exchanging value. So if you if you chase the mechanism, i.e. money, you're going to chase your tail for the rest of your life.
Yep.
You chase adding value, and you'll look over your shoulder and realize that somebody's taken something out of their pocket and given something to you called money to benchmark the value you've just given. So learning how to really get to grips with that and become a value-adding machine, you start unhooking this game of chasing money, which means you'll chase your tail. Again, nobody sits in front of the fire and says, give me some heat and I'll go fetch you some wood. Mm-hmm. Now, we know that game is not one you can win.
Right.
But so many people do it. How do I make money? How do I get out and make money? So the Millionaire Business School kind of hoodwinks people into learning how to make money. I'll teach you that. I can teach you how to make money in your sleep. I'll handle the ticket price in a way that I guarantee you 1,000 times return, or I'll cut you a check when you leave on Sunday. That's easy.
Yep.
But that's not the game. The game is, who do you become as a result of going through a transformational process, so that now you're free to go and make $1 million, but you're not doing it to try and prove you're good enough, or take your business 10x so you can stand on Forbes magazine and think it's the be all and end all. Fulfillment is very different to wealth. Yeah.
So you're teaching people to kind of get out of their own way on the first day, and then you give them the tools and techniques.
Exactly. Right. That's freedom.
Yeah.
And I've had people come with business partners on the first day, and at the end of the first day, they've split.
Huh.
And for the right reasons, and they've been happy about it, and it's like a release. There's no animosity. There's a mature way of divorcing at that level that isn't about pointing fingers. And now they're free to go chase their passion in a way that they have the tools to make it happy, rather than design themselves into an equation that they can't balance when it comes to money and happiness.
That's some powerful stuff. And it's something that they don't teach you in business school, and it's something that you don't know as an entrepreneur for the first time. When I was in my 20s, it was all about the money. And I think that's just, that money brings freedom, therefore it's all about the money. And as I've matured and gotten more awareness of the ego and all, I've gotten a lot more into the mission. And that's what drives Bulletproof. And it made me laugh when you sort of said, well, the name Millionaire Business School is attracting people kind of for the wrong reason, right? And you go take the first day, you say, here's why you're really here. And the name Bulletproof is the same thing. Right? When I was young, I was all about being invincible. Everyone wants to be untouchable, invincible. But at the end of the day, what's really bulletproof is the old story of the willow versus the oak tree. It's about resilience. So when you realize that if you really want to be bulletproof and invincible, you need to build resilience. And resilience comes biologically, it comes psychologically, it comes spiritually. And that's not been an easy thing for me, but that's the sort of knowledge that I'm working to share with Bulletproof. But it's very much the same thing. You need to get people's attention, and you need to let the people, see, okay, there's value here, and if this is what they're chasing now, but in order to get what they're chasing, they might have to approach the problem from a different perspective or a different level than they did. And I know that because that's exactly what happened to me.
Sure.
Like, I talk a lot about, $6 million when I was 26 years old, the company that created modern cloud computing, and it was an amazing time. And then I always say this, and people delete this, like journalists especially. And then I lost it 2 years later. So when you're 26, you make $6 million. When you're 28, you lose $6 million, right? And this is a manifestation of exactly the stuff you're talking about there. And I wish to hell that someone back then had just said, if you just know these few things, like, you'll hold on to your money and you'll be able to do like all of these amazing things. So I ended up spending more than a decade making my monthly paycheck and working in an increasingly meaningless type of role, big corporate America, doing technology stuff that was no longer changing the world. Cloud computing, that kind of changed the world. But when you get into, well, we have a slightly better process for distributing packets, it's actually not that meaningful. And so for me to finally just reach the point where I'm going to do something, going back early in our conversation, it's like, the certain path for me was start a computer security startup. I could go be CEO of someone else's startup. And instead I started a coffee company. which is completely bass backwards and still has people scratching their heads, but it's for the reasons that we just discussed here.
Beautiful.
Right? You got to follow your passion. So,
and everything you do, I have to say this, David, everything you do as the ethos of Bulletproof is a projection of your level of consciousness, and that comes across so well. It's beautiful. It leaves such a path for people to follow, not only biohacking themselves, which everybody's trying to do now to compensate for the not enough hours in the day, instant information, push notification life that most people settle for living in. But you've also got a lead into why you do this. What is the reason behind? How do I source this? Why are you so hooked into information that has so much bias in ways that the media will take you down a blind alley? And here's the truth, and I'm not afraid to say it. And I've tested it, and there's no commercial agenda here other than the fact that as an expression of adding value to you, I want to give you the best. And that does come across. Now, I love you for that, Dave. And the company's thriving, and quite rightly should do, as a result of that. That's a social enterprise at its highest point. How do I serve the greater good in a way that comes from my passion, my heart, and my own experience, not a balance sheet exclusively?
Part of what has motivated me historically is doing things faster and doing things with more scale, so they don't break as they get bigger. Yeah. And all of the technology innovation I've worked with has been around those two things. And those really are driven by laziness. Like I don't want to waste effort, so I could put the effort to something bigger and more important, and then I can automate and get rid of these things. And so I've been working on ways to scale the type of things that I do with Bulletproof if I work with people one-on-one. And there's almost no time left in my schedule for doing that kind of coaching, because I'm a CEO and I'm a content provider and I run Bulletproof Radio. And there just aren't enough hours in the day because I'm also a dad and I'm not going to give up on my kids.
Sure.
So I just literally this week launched the Bulletproof Certified Coaching Program, which is designed to take people who not necessarily are going after the millionaire entrepreneur thing, but who are looking to change people's lives, to build in a structure with as much of the knowledge and a framework as I know how to put into it, so they can learn it. It's a 20-week program that's not at all a profitable part of Bulletproof, but compared to just running the business that's there. But what it does do is it makes for far more scale.
Yeah.
So that for all the people who hear this and say, I want more, but I'm not going to get on Peter's calendar, I'm not going to get on David's calendar, but I want someone to help me. I'd like to create that community and that ripple. So I'm really hopeful that that's a way of also giving back and spreading that message out. Because at the end of the day, the work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing, if people feel better, they have more energy, they're actually nicer to each other. And I know this because I used to be a total jerk, especially when my blood sugar was low. You don't feed me right, like everyone's an asshole. And then suddenly you feed me right, and wow, if these people are pretty nice. And
hangry, I think they call it.
Hangry or hypoglycemic, right? And so when I see this around me, because I've developed radar for that in myself, and you can see it in others, and you realize, okay, that altercation on the road right there, like one or both of those people are malnourished, like their brains don't have what they need, and they're operating like chimpanzees, not like humans. And it's not because they're less than human, it's because the parts of their brain that regulate their behavior are not working because they don't have energy. And you realize, well, the more we teach people this knowledge, and this is just a knowledge thing, then we actually make the world a nicer place. And since I'm a dad, I have kids, and I care about the world I live in and the world that they are going to grow up in. Anytime anyone's out there moving people in the right direction, say you actually can control those things and you're actually responsible for them, and here's some tools to make it easier. That seems really valuable. What do you do to make what you do scale even more? Like how do you take your core goals and make them more accessible to people?
Well, for a start, obviously we have the power now of being able to reach 6 billion people at the push of a button. So I'm transitioning to a lot more in terms of getting a lot of my content online. Okay. I love being able to interact, and my Millionaire Business School is something which I enjoy. I'm proud of it. It's 3 days, but it's 40 hours of content. I mean, you got me on stage for 40 hours because that's my passion. This isn't a typical coffee at 11 o'clock and then lunch break and then we go through.
That's a lot of energy to put it on stage. You have to run marathons to be able to do that. Wow,
yeah,
that's impressive.
It's passion. Yeah, and energy comes from passionate interest. Now, again, there's a limit to the biophysical level that you can support that with. But I'm a great believer. If you get a guy that's crawling through the desert and he's on his last legs, he sees an oasis, he suddenly has a physical state change where his energy suddenly goes up. And it wasn't because he just drank a can of caffeine drink. It was a case of energy comes from passionate interest. I say to people, if you're low, then and you're not passionate, you're going to need stimulation. You're going to need stuff to be able to get you up. But if you have that passion and you then take care of yourself physically, you've got 1 + 1 = 11 going in your favor. So for me, 40 hours on stage, doing what I'm passionate about and seeing people transform and taking people through that journey is, I can do it back to back and not an issue. But I'm scaling. I do the Millionaire Business School probably 3 times a year. We're putting a student version together to go through university soon as well. So, because 1 in 4 students coming out of university now looking to start their business for the reasons I mentioned. There's just not enough opportunity. You get people spend 4 years studying to become a barrister and they end up being a barista because there's just not there's not enough opportunity. So, with the barrier to entry low, entrepreneurship is now the time to get involved. And as you said, looking back, you wish somebody would have given you the hints and tips to save that $6 million. Although, part of those lessons you're grateful for as well.
I learned a lot.
Yeah. So, to go through the Millionaire Business School as a sort of student or graduate is a huge gift to be able to give people to save them a lot of the mistakes that I was, dumb enough to make at the time. And so but that's limited. It's time. But scaling it through a level of group coaching, for example. I used to do one-on-one. My elite mentorship program was taking people through one-on-one individual coaching, but I no longer have the ability to let my time go for that. If you want my one-on-one time now, it's out of range of most people, and I'll take on 3 clients maximum just to keep me sharp one-on-one.
Yeah.
And that's more of a bullet strike rather than a bulletproof model. I'll go in and take care of whatever the issue, and then they're gone whenever it's fixed. That's easy.
I'm the same way. Right?
Yeah. But group coaching is something that I do. I put a lot of my elite mentorship forum is now transitioning onto a far more online, so I can take people through a lot of my content, then do a group session where I take people through the Q&A and integration of that into their life. So that's one of the ways that I'm scaling at that point. But it's, as I say, our time is the most valuable resource.
Right.
You can get your money back on anything. If you lose it on something, it's tuition fee. We all pay that. If you can get health back if you take it to a point where it's not irrevocable. I've rarely seen anything unless you've got literally minutes left where that can't be revoked by putting in the right things and stop putting in the wrong things.
Right.
And thoughts as well as nutrition. But time, I'm sorry, you can have a 25-figure bank balance. You try buying back the last hour. Ain't happening. So, and that's where I see a lot of business owners, Dave, as well. They spend so much time chasing after something that if they took a breath, losing health, losing relationship with their kids, losing, all of the different things that are on their values list, because they're chasing something. If they stop and took a breath, they'd already have it. And I'm not prepared to do that. So what I focus my time on now is, again, how do I help more people? The MBS, the Millionaire Business School, is just a passion. I love it. It's transformative. It has the same results for everybody that goes through every time at various degrees of transformation. That's a passion. I choose that. I'd pay to do that myself.
Right.
But one-on-one time has to be group level now, as you say, going for the coaching, just so that our message can reach more people, to help more people, to make the world a better place.
Well said. And last time I asked you the question that's always at the end of Bulletproof Radio, which is, what are the top 3 things that you'd recommend for someone who wants to perform better? And pretty much all the guests have answered this. You're the only guy who said, actually, the first thing would be don't have top 3 lists or something like that, which is actually pretty funny. And then you answered the question really, really well. So I want to ask you something else. And now, without putting constraints around performance or anything else, just given what you know, the top 3 most important things people should know, period. It's not about performance anymore. Just.
Got it. Top 3 things people should know, period.
Most important pieces of wisdom you have to impart. And your last name is Sage, so this is going to be a good answer.
Yeah, people ask me, did I make that up? That's my birth name. If there was ever an elusive, obvious knocking on my door, then listen, Pete. The first thing we've already covered, I'd say it's your why. What is your why? Why are you doing this? Because that is the impetus for everything. Know what it is, the reason why you're doing what you're doing. Because everything will have its genesis from that place. If your reasons for why are bigger than your reasons why you shouldn't, you're going to move forward in directions that'll take you on a different path of life. So 3 things people should know. Why?
Why? Okay.
And don't be afraid to take your time to find out. It's not like, oh, quick, let's go tick that box. This isn't a box tick. It goes deeper than that. This is about the fundamental reasons of searching for your current purpose. And don't think that the why is going to be fixed for the next 25 years. We change, we evolve. We're different people. So that will project at that particular time of our life. What else should you know? It's almost impossible to know what you don't know. You should probably know what you should know. And for a lot of people, that's focus on the area that's most important to you. Do some study around that, because we live in an age now where there's way too much information. People are drowning in information and starving for wisdom. And to be able to have that level of focus on what's important, know what it is that you should know, and go for that. And I would say the next thing people that absolutely should know would be their boundaries. Know what is important to you in terms of, well, I'm okay to say no to that. Otherwise, you'll get pulled in 1,000 different directions. I'm okay to own my own sense of truth without making apology for it. I'm okay to know that that's just not something that's important to me, therefore I'm not going to engage. I don't have to be an asshole about it. I don't have to be, wrap it in bubble wrap because I'm scared of what other people will think. No. I own my own sense of truth. And when I know what that is, then life takes on a very different sense of effervescence, of purpose, of passion. And that is really where true freedom starts to be able to live a life that's meaningful.
Some powerful answers. Now, given that we're up on the end of the show, where can people find out more about you, about Millionaire Business School, and just about your work in general? You've got so many irons in the fire. I don't even know where to send them.
The best place always, petersage.com.
Okay.
That's kind of a central hub. I've got a lot of stuff out on YouTube and everything else for other people. You can find about the Millionaire Business School on my website, say petersage.com. You can follow me on Twitter, petersage007. People ask me about the Bond connection. I think there was just 6 other people before me, so it just ties in well. But no, I'm accessible. I'm available online, and it would be a privilege to have people come through one of my experiences so that I can add as much value as possible. And it's just an honor to be able to have the opportunity to share on a medium like this with you, Dave, to be able to do that.
Thanks, Peter. If you enjoyed this episode sitting in your car, you need to log in to the Bulletproof YouTube channel and check it out, because Peter just radiates energy when he talks. And if you decide you want to do some sort of training, I highly recommend what he does. But you should just see this one, because this is one of those things. Not only are we filming live, we're filming live and you're going to see Peter and he just kind of glows in the dark. It's a pretty cool effect. So that said, thanks for listening in on this episode of Bulletproof Radio, and I'll see you for the next one.